great to see so many people here, so many beautiful Chicanas and Chicanos here on campus today. My name is Juan Pablo Mercado. I am a full-time instructor in the history department, but I do specialize in Chicano and Chicana history. And so I want to welcome you on behalf of the Social Sciences Division and the Chabot College Library to this wonderful event. I'm going to make this very short and sweet here. It's really truly an honor and a pleasure. I got to meet Dr. Fernandez here a couple of months ago, and he's truly been a mentor and a role model and just an amazing asset to the community here at Chabot. Without any further ado, I want to introduce Dr. Denise Fernandez.
Well, this is a very, very emotional day for me because Chabot was my home for over 35 years. And I lived in Hayward from 1966 till 2005, okay? So Hayward is really my home, and this is my homeland. I have a very complicated life. I came to this country as a minor or by myself. The minute I arrived, they put me to the side and they say, wait for the next plane to take you back where you came from. And I did have a visa, I did have but I had no money. And I came all the way from Key West, Florida to Salt Lake City, Utah, which was a very strange land. Even for Americans, there is a lot of cultural differences in there. My first friend was a Chicano. A friend that really I could speak to in Spanish, enjoy hot food, spicy jalapenos and habaneros and all that stuff. And he took me to his house and I learned, so I am like an adopted Chicano. I was born in Cuba and I came before the whole turmoil that you have seen in the news. When I came, there were over 20,000 people who had been killed out of a population of about 6 million, 7 million. And I was only one of 11 high school graduates in my hometown out of a total of 600 that began. So I had good, strong recommendations. The reason I graduated was not because I had a different brain, but it was because my familia, really put a lot of efforts into getting me educated, and my mother just threw me out of the house and says, "Vete, go on," you know, and I was able to make it into a new world. So it's like I have two lives. Probably the most moving part of my life was the Chicano Movement. Back in 1967, around that time, a fellow who worked here in maintenance work. I was the first Latino here. I was the first Latino many times when I got a job, and this time I had already worked in the fields in Idaho. I was promised $600. I didn't get paid, and so I had a little experience, you know, in working out there, and the era of exploitation, which I don't know if has disappeared, but we know that there's still problems around. So when this fellow came, his name is Ray Marchand, and he was one of the few people I could speak to here at Chabot College. It's really amazing to see these faces. I mean, you really fill me with a sense of there is a future, because in those days, nobody except for maintenance workers will kind of connect with me and say something like, "Buenos días, ¿cómo está?" Something, you know, that would really make me happy and kind of feeling that I was part of something. So Ray Marchand came after to me and says, "You know, we're organizing, or there's something going on, organizing this group." And the word Chicano wasn't used. They didn't use that at all. And there we were, some of these wonderful ladies that you see here, We have at the very left
Like
there.
you, look like you, young.
It is. I would tell your age. I would say.
It's okay, we met in the late sixties and now we're in our late sixties.
And then Jessica R. Maria Elena Ramirez. Felix Galaviz wasn't there, but he came a little later, and he just was one of these people who was a mover and shaker and changed the whole structure here. Onofre Antonio Abarca, and of course we had later on a fellow like Francisco Cermeño. Francisco Cermeño was the person to really move Chabot outside of his environment and connect to the city government. So that was quite a movement. And then later on, I would like to introduce as well Mariana Treviso. Mariana Treviso was a little girl about, and her dad, Rudy Zapata Treviso. He didn't use Zapata, but there was a Z there in his name, which I discovered meant Zapata. And so anyway, Rudy was an amazing guy who moved the Chicano movement into a real organization. And he had a lot of difficulties, if you can imagine. In those days, it wasn't easy at all. When I was, I did write a book that has a lot of historical anecdotes, you know, and it has a lot of things dealing with, it has a lot of historical things. Some of them are things that I kept. I have some on display, and then we are going to take them to the historical archives here in town to preserve them. And Mariana had a lot of stuff from her dad that she had kept. Unfortunately, her dad passed, and back in, what year was that? 60.
He was
No.
Oh, he was 61, yeah. But it was kind of an unexpected departure, you know. But I always have him in my heart, in my soul, because he did so much work, you know, for really moving the college forward. Anyway, so when we also have here present a Hayward resident for many years, Juan Espinosa. Juan Espinosa had a radio program here for many years, and I want him at some time to talk about his experiences and some of the walls that we had to face, you know, in those days. When I came to Chabot, and I did not have, I was not a citizen. I was a fake, you know, somehow. And didn't have tenure, of course. And I remember one of the, I won't mention his name, so one of the top administrators called me to his office, and he used some really offensive word. That's when we were starting the meetings, you know. No Chicano had been hired. School had started in 1960 in San Leandro, and 6 years later, you know, we had no representation. We were a community college without community representation. So this man, this administrator, says to me, you know, called me to a secret meeting into his office, and he said, "What is that chicanery about?" Well, I felt offended, and I say, "If you want to find out, you come to the meetings." From that time on, he never spoke to me. I would see him, you know, walking along here, and he did that to other people as well. And he would just move his head like that in a way that, you know, imagine if you were working here as a beginner and your boss treated you like that, you know. So anyway, the same way happened with another person that unfortunately cannot be here. She lives now in Mazatlan, in Mexico. Her name at the time was Emily Webb. Emily Webb was the first Latina to be hired, and she taught English. And Emily was one of these real fighters, a person that went out there. Bravo, Emily! Emily marched along the administration building. Some of the students did amazing things. I have it all, in the book. I'll give you kind of a rundown. Please stop me in about 10 minutes, if possible. So give me a sign.
3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. Emily was someone that I really miss. Her daughter, Karen, brought her to my house. I used to live in kind of in a finca, in a farm kind of area. And I was very honored to see Emily and to give her a hug and to talk about the good old days and what we had done, reminisce, laugh, and all of that. And her daughter took a picture of us. Unfortunately, her daughter passed away from an aneurysm. She was a very lively person, and it was just shocking to me to find out that she had passed. Emily was advised by her counselor not to become a teacher, because in those days, Chicanos, Mexicanos did not go into the teaching profession. She was told the best you can hope for is to be a secretary. Well, Emily came here to teach English, and she became finally a lawyer, graduate from Stanford University, probably one of the first to do that. An amazing woman, an amazing contributor to the Chicano student movement. I myself had similar stories too. I was not advised to go into mathematics because we didn't have any representation in mathematics. So the best you can do is maybe teach Spanish. That's about as far as you can do. And there's nothing wrong with that, I think that's great. But many times, there was no counselors in here. There was nothing. So if you you were a Chicano, let's say in my math class, you didn't know, had no connection, no connectivity. And I think as an educator, as a teacher, some of the best education that you can get is not from a teacher in a classroom, blah, 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 but it's from people around you, from your community, from things like that are also good sources of education. And when you have a school that deprives you from that, the school is not functioning right. Anyway, I am going to just, again, if anybody is interested in this, I'll be glad to get a donation from you. Anything that is above and beyond what I paid for the cost of printing will go to a scholarship fund that will be given to Chabot College. And so it is here. We might not have enough coffee for everyone, but you could give me your name and I could either send it to you. My wife Noreen is back there. She can help with the distribution of books. Noreen is way back there. She's another one of those silent, humble person that is a leader behind the scenes, getting things straight and getting my life organized. Anyway, I gave a kind of a speech that I would like to read to you, and then I will be quiet, and I would like to give a chance to people here to say something about what they remember. We'll keep it down to just a few minutes each, but you are really faced here with amazing people. I forgot to introduce Jaime Flores. He was the first history teacher here. And he changed the landscape of Chabot Believe with his new classes. I have an outline of one of the classes that he taught, and I have an article that he wrote many years ago. He was one of a kind, and I remember it was probably the first teacher where some students were involved in hiring. They were not the ones that signed me, but they were involved in getting Hyman, and I think he was the first one. Anyway, this is since tomorrow is the Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo, you don't know how familiar you are. It's a very, very important day that transcends Mexico. It really is something to teach us all about the need to mobilize, to resist any type of oppression or injustice, okay? At that time, Mexico, this was in 1862, a country had lost about half of its territory, okay? And it was about to be taken over by the French, one of the most powerful armies in the world. And a man by the name of, remind me, Benito Juarez. Benito Juarez was the leader. He was a mestizo who had a fight that said enough is enough, and he was able to knock the French out of there and have a nation like we know today in existence. So at the Battle of Puebla, there was about 150 years ago, the Mexican nation, in one of the most difficult moments in its history, after losing half of its territory a few years earlier, a nation divided on the Civil War, besieged by the superpowers of the day, by Spain, France, and Britain, and invaded by one of the most powerful armies in that world. Mexico wrote one of the most glorious pages of its history at the Battle of Puebla, el 5 de mayo de 1862, May 5th, 1862. Today, I wrote this about 25 years ago, but today this example serves as inspiration in our continuous struggle to advance our quest for justice in schools, like Chabot, and community. 25 years ago, 50 years ago, I had the most powerful, rewarding experience of my teaching career at Chabot College. For I, the teacher, became the learner, and the students became the maestros. They were my teachers of history in the making, and a history that wasn't taught. Not a single Chicano on the faculty, no community programs relevant to our culture, no counselors on our staff, excluded from practically every aspect of college life, with little or no consideration given to the educational needs. Our country was led by President Nixon. Every night when you turn on the TV in the 1960s, the first part of the news that we listened to by Walter Cronkite was reports about the deaths in faraway Vietnam. The reverend and admired leader of the civil rights movement, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., had been assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. Our own Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta were organizing farm workers with a lot of enmity around them. So even here, and then we also had great leaders like Ruben Salazar in Los Angeles, that was killed. Corky Gonzalez in Colorado, okay? Reyes Tijerina in New Mexico. These were people that put their life right there, you know, at the rim of really losing it and disaster. So even here at Chabot, we could not escape the changes taking place around us, and we organized the Chicano Student Union. I was a facilitator. I was not an organizer. They were the organizers. The students tried to talk to the same administrators who had not directly addressed the educational needs of the Mexicano. It was stated that no problem existed, and we were trying to make something out of nothing. In other words, there was so much ignorance in the power that controlled the school that they didn't see any problem. What are you talking about? You know, there's nothing here to be addressed. So what happened? Passive action took place. Students in solidarity. We were in solidarity with the Black Students Union, with women, with people with minority situations, of impediment, physical impediments, and people who needed changes in our community. So we were able to make some changes. Among the accomplishments, in a very short time, with police sometimes out here, with a tent called La Carpa. I don't know if you remember that. We got a centro de información. We got a center going on. We got a tutorial center, okay? We have counselors that were hired. And programs from the community, you know, like El Teatro Campesino came here. We had leaders that we were able to bring in, but after a great deal of struggle. In honor of the courageous students who founded the Chicano Student Union, I wrote a poem that I would like to just finish for you. Back in 1969, I say, 25 años atrás, Nixon, Commander-in-Chief, and Cronkite on CBS TV, body count they brought from faraway Vietnam. Dr. King, I dream. The flame was gone, nuestro César y Dolores. Basta ya, they say, campesinos, campesinas, organize. Winds of change will not escape us. ¿Quién soy yo? And who are we in the mythic melting pot? Invisible strangers en tierras de Aztlán. Raza cósmica, soy de aquí, por la causa, I live and fight. Chicano, Chicana. Latino, Latina, Mexicano, Mexicana, soy. And that's it. Felix. Okay, so I'd like to introduce. Okay. Oh, no, she has to leave. Okay. I would like
Sorry,
to.
you guys.
Yes, go ahead.
So can I just speak from here? Is this microphone? Okay. Hi, I'm sorry, I'm a classroom teacher here in Hayward at Eldridge, and I have somebody
That's okay.
holding my kids for me, so, my name is Mariana Treviso, and my father was Rudy Treviso. He was the president of the first Chicano Student Union here at Chabot. I would like to thank the Vice really for bringing this book and the movement to light. Some of the things and articles that you will see in the book have been in my storage for a very long time. My father, obviously, he kept every single paper he ever got his hands on, was ever written, he wrote, and he received. And they were meaningful for me, as I know they were for him. But I had never thought that it would come to it being meaningful to so many people. So I appreciate you all for coming here, and thank you to Chabot College for facilitating this time to reflect on the Chicano movement here in Hayward. Today, the struggle for social justice is just as relevant as it was in the 60s. And I tell my students all the time how fortunate they are to sit in a room with each other and to be able to look at brown and black faces and to be able to learn from a Chicana teacher. I also have taught math here in Hayward for lots of years, and that is an anomaly in itself. As a little girl, I was very little, I was probably around 5, and my dad would drag me absolutely everywhere with him. And so I colored a lot underneath tables that they were having meetings, that I didn't know at the time exactly the impact that that involvement would have on my life for the future. And it has made me who I am today, and it also reflects in my teaching in my classroom. Social justice is very important for me, and I transfer those values into my students in my classroom in the hopes that they too will go forward because they are the future. So that, little did I know, attending the Chicano Moratorium when I was 5 years old and being bussed with, I don't know who, somebody over there was taking care of me. And while my dad was marching, while Ruben Salazar was being murdered in a bar. And so those types of experiences, I never really understood exactly until I myself was in college. And one day, I'm an ethnic studies major, which by the way is under attack again right now. And at Cal State, and I opened up a history book in one of my classes, and I was like, wow, these pictures look really familiar of the Chicano Moratorium, these streets. And I called my dad and I said, hey, Papa, what? And he goes, yes, you were there, Mariana. And I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. I was just little. I was very, very little. And I appreciate him and my mother and all the people that I was around at that time that took such great care of me and took me on as their own. So I remember those times. But please, I went here to Chabot College, just a little bit about me. I came back to school when I was 25. I went through a lot of struggles as a teenager, and it was my father's influence and my mother's that really propelled me to go back to school. And my dad used to tell me, you know, Mariana, they can take away your money, they can take away your car, they can take away your house, but they can never take away your mind. And education is something you can hold in your back pocket forever, and his words still ring true today. So I went to Chabot when I was 25, I got my AA, I transferred to Cal State, got my bachelor's in ethnic studies with a minor in Chicano Latino and studies, and then I went on and got my teaching credential later on. So I have never stopped learning, and just like Delvis says, sometimes in my classroom, I am not the teacher, I am the learner, and my students teach me, still to this day. So I just want to thank you all for allowing this and for being here, and like Cesar Chavez always said, que viva la causa.
Mariana.
I got a class. Okay. Jaime Flores.
Yeah. Thanks to people like Tony here and Rudy Treviso and Delvis and Felix over there and Paz Flores, I got my job here at Chabot in 1969, and I taught Chicano history, also taught economics, because in those days they didn't want us to be too specialized. They were worried about quality education, and they somehow suspected that Chicanos were not as qualified. So I've taught other fields besides Chicano history, but Chicano history has been my baby. It's going to Juan Pablo now, thank goodness. I'm ready to sign off. But, I remember all the struggles. I remember Tony with his fatigues. And I remember Francisco very well. I was a faculty advisor for Mecha for about 4 or 5 years, and then of course Francisco has been for a long time. I remember the parties we would go to, and the dancing, and all the good times we had. And I'm still here. I guess I'm going to be teaching economics for a short time period, and I've got a class right now, so I've got to get going. But it's been great being here. I will be back in about an hour, si ustedes están aquí. And hopefully we'll go from there. Muchas gracias.
Okay, next we have Tony Abarca.
Well, just, my name is Onofre Antonio Abarca, and I was here at Chabot back in 69, 70, 71, 72, taking classes, and I wasn't focused. I wanted to, como se dice, wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And out of that, back in 69 or 70, especially with Chicano history coming up, I said, that's what I want, Chicano history. And I started getting involved, taking those classes, history classes and so forth. But my passion was actually grassroots organizing. And at that time, we were forming La Raza Unida Party here in South County. And the Mecha meetings were very active, very, I mean, in the sense of, it was not just to plan for a party, but actually was planning because we had people within Mecha who were Democrats and they wanted to support the Democratic Party. And then we had the ones that were La Raza Unida, and we were pushing that agenda. The question of social justice, what we're facing now, we faced then. One of the things that we were very active besides the farm worker movement was the question of stopping 238. and they wanted to actually destroy the coro. And through La Raza Unida and the community grassroots, because I was working full-time and coming to school, taking a class or two, and being active, I mean, that's a lot of work. And, but we were able to stop 238, you know, with the help of the community. That was the only reason we stopped it. But coming to Mecha here at the Chicano Student Union, we were able to not only be active in the community, because we wanted the students that we have to link ourselves in the community. We cannot separate one from the other. But we also have to be linked also with labor struggles. It cannot be, and that's actually what I became. I became a labor organizer, and which represented janitors, mostly immigrants, and home care workers, también. So the thing is that here at Chabot, that's what we were trying to do, is to fight for social justice. Like at that time we organized a walkout against the war because Chicanos were being killed in Vietnam. You know, we made 5% of the population at the time, and 20% were being killed. That's genocide in my book. But the thing is, we were active in that. As a matter of fact, Mecha got an award for the most active student body here at Chabot. So the thing is, that's what we were about at Chabot. And through the Elvis, through Jaime, through the different few teachers, they were also very supportive of the struggles that were going on. Of course, they couldn't get too much involved, but the thing is, it was up to us. And so we just have to learn from that. Things have not changed. To me, things have gotten worse, actually. And we're still fighting for social justice. Today, what happened with the ACA, you know, they override the, you know, with the Affordable Care Act. So the thing is, Raza, what are we gonna do? And it's up to the students, the future, to be active and to demand, not to ask. We have to demand, you know, and the thing is that whatever we want. And, but at that time, you know, I miss those days, you know, in the sense of we were very active and always doing something here at Chabot in the community, and so that's.
Thank you. Oh, just to leave, okay. Francisco Cermeño is an amazing guy who moved Chabot out of his surroundings. Okay, go for it.
My apologies, I have another meeting. Well, Andrew's gonna have a real good question later.
Oh, okay, good.
All right, so, I really, I'm the baby here, and if we're not for all of these folks, if we're not for all of these, they really, I would not be here, in the sense they opened up, they opened up the floodgates to be able to say, now we need to hire some more minorities. So I'm the first real Mexicano pata rajada nopal en la frente, Moreno, hired to teach Spanish. So in the past, it was an Argentinian, it was an Italian. So it really was something else. I'm the first tanned Mexican and the first Mexican national to be hired. And that, to me, that was something that eventually just kind of broke open the gates. It really did. And I looked at my grade sheet for my first quarter at Chabot College, fall quarter of 1978. I had 70 students. 2 were Latinos. Nowadays, I have my class Spanish to be 14 students. 1 is Anglo. The rest are Latinos. You see how much changed. It took Chabot about 35 years to finally find a Latina to teach English. That was Angie Magallon, because Latinos can't teach English, maybe can teach Spanish, like I, Mexican can teach Spanish with their eyes closed. Now, knowing that it took me 7 years to really master it and be el máximo representante de la lengua de Dios aquí en la tierra, de la lengua del español. So that's really unique. And if it were not for these folks, I mean, when they were out here fighting the pubs and doing all of these things, La Carpa, I was a happy student at UC Santa Barbara. I was a happy student representing UC, the UC system of the education program in Spain and in Mexico City, and these guys were fighting it. And these are the folks, these are my real heroes. I came to Chihuahua in 1978, and the first people I met was Denise and Bernard Chan and Felix. My apologies to you ladies, you remember my class. And then
You weren't in our class.
Dorado over there who actually ran for Oakland City Council, so that was very, very good. Next time, okay. So that's really something very important. We treasure people like Delvis and Felix, we really do. And Delvis does me honor when he says that I took Chabot and put it in the community. And one of the reasons I did that is because Chabot's a community college, but if you really notice, there's no community in Chabot College. Yeah. Where is this community? So I've been fighting that for a long time, so I said, okay, so I'll go out in the community and see what happens. Whereas you folks put us in the map, and put us in the map on the ethnic studies program. Ethnic studies is under attack now. It was under attack before when I was a student. In 1974 at UC Santa Barbara, it was under attack then. We actually took over the building. That was really neat. That was an experience. They're doing that over at Santa Cruz right now, UC Santa Cruz. And with that, my deep gratitude, muchísimas gracias. Sí, son ustedes chingones.
I'd like to move to the ladies. One of the persons that had the greatest impact.
With Buzz.
Well, there's Paz Flores, and but there is Teresa Beltran gave a speech that I think, I don't know if you guys remember, that was one of the most moving speeches at a board meeting. We were so many of us that we had to move to a bigger classroom. Remember that?
Yes.
And Pat and Teresa, who appeared to be a very shy, kind of humble person in the meetings, never said anything. She came over and she talked about, and I would like her to say a few words. Could you? Teresa.
Sure. I actually remember 2 meetings that were traumatic for me because I think so. I was a very shy person. I started at Chabot, and I found that I knew no one. I saw very few faces that were in any way similar to mine. So when I came in contact with Rudy and others, I found a group that I called my family. And there was an occasion where Rudy was unable to make the presentation, so I was asked to stand in. That was traumatic for me. It was in front of a very large audience. It was a speech essentially laying out our demands to the school. And I use the word demand because who were we, these 18, 19-year-olds, to stand in front of these very educated, very polished individuals demanding that they make changes to their curriculum, demanding that they recognize that we were part of this large community. So that was very difficult. I'm actually having difficulty right now, getting emotional thinking about it. But I felt supported by the people here at the table. I felt supported by the people that were in the audience. I felt as though I had been given this opportunity to speak on behalf of so many people who had not had their voices heard or listened to by these primarily white male men who looked to be in their 50s, 60s, who essentially displayed disdain towards us because we were just starting. We weren't people who voted. We weren't taxpayers. we were not recognized as being representative of the community. We weren't landowners. So to stand there, or to sit there actually, and make this presentation on behalf of our group was a powerful moment, not just for me, but for the organization. So that was one of many little things that we did, maybe not so little, that one, but there were so many other occasions where we had to step forward and both introduce ourselves and at the same time make a demand or insist that our voices be recognized and that they do something different, whether it's changed the way they set up their instructional programs or the way they went about making decisions.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I would like to introduce one of the earth-shaking individual here. This is Felix Galaviz, who started the Puente project that is not just the Chibó, it's all over the state and has really changed the lives of many, many students. Felix.
You know, it's really, really a pleasure to be here with all of my brothers and sisters. Listening to Teresa, I was at that speech, I was at that meeting, and I remember in that time how we were all so silent, listening to those words, because we were bringing them all into our life. So, very good presentation at that time, Teresa, and you did it again. Gracias. Again, my name is Felix Galaviz. I was a Vietnam veteran when I got here to Chibó College. I was walking in building 100, and suddenly I looked over to my right side and I saw all these Chicanos with the big signs, you know, Chicano power, Chicano this, Chicano that, and everything else. And I looked over there and I said, I grew up in Salinas. I grew up in the barrios. I grew up in the toughest communities ever, and we all called each other Chicanos. And so, you know, it captured my imagination, and I followed it out. What I discovered was that I had spent a lot of time in Vietnam. I spent 1.5 years in the hospital because I got wounded in Vietnam. And when I came to Chibó College, when I asked one of the administrators, I said, what is that group over there of Chicanos, you know, asking for? Oh, they're asking for too many things. Like what? He said, well, they're asking for tutorials and everything. If they're not ready, they shouldn't be here. I said, well, I'm not ready, and I gotta be here. And I went to Vietnam. You got a responsibility of teaching me. Well, it was a moment for me, a crystallizing moment that racism and discrimination was alive and well here at Chibó College. And it was very deeply seated in the administration, the way they saw us, the way they looked at us. Of course, a lot of them looked at me and they said, are you a Mexican? I had red hair at the time. ¿Verdad?
Yes.
Yeah, Chupin, that's what they call me. And then one time, Emily Ortega, who was one of my English teachers in class, was asking me the question because I used to always raise my hand and say, we gotta do something. We gotta do something. And she says, why do you keep asking those questions? I said, well, because, you know, aren't we Chicanos? And then she looked at me and she goes, are you a Chicano? I said, aren't you Emily Ortega? Emily Webb at the time. And she said, yes. Aren't you from Salinas? Yes, I am. I'm from Salinas. Where do you think Chicanos come from? Salinas. So she had a rude awakening, and finally, eventually, people started to realize that, yeah, es bueno, pero Chicano to the core. And it's true. What I learned in those times was how to be able to organize, to coordinate, to stand up, you know, to your beliefs and your values, to value yourself in spite of the fact that sometimes you were threatened with being jailed. And I was one of the co-presidents of the Chicano Student Union when we had the carpa behind the president's office. And every time he walked in, we would wave to him. Because we demanded to have a tutorial center. We saw our sisters and brothers coming from high schools dropping out, and we couldn't keep them in. And we were trying to retain them. Unfortunately, they didn't listen. You know, all our pleas fell in deaf ears. And eventually, we were threatened. There was a big, long line of police cars down the road. At 6 o'clock, you will all go to jail. And at that time, there was a human relations officer from the city of Hayward by the name of Charlie Santana. And I called him up and said, Charlie, I'm a student here at Chabot. They're gonna throw us in jail at 6 o'clock. Is it really true? You're the Human Resource Center for the city of Hayward. Can they throw us in? And he told me, he said, Felix, give me half an hour. I'm gonna check it in. He called me back and he told me, he says, oh, by the way, I just called the president. And I told him that if he tried to jail the Chicanos in the carpa, because there was about 40 of us, and Jaime, and everybody else, Emily, everybody was there, because we were ready to be taken away. We had made a decision that we were gonna be hauled away to jail. He told us that if they touched us in that car, in la carpa, that they would put him in jail, because Chabot College was a community college, and we were paying taxes. So we had the right to be there, to serve in our capacity, to have our tent, and to demonstrate our freedom of speech. And se quedó la carpa, and 1 week later, they started to negotiate for a tutorial center. And finally, we got one of the most outstanding centers, El Centro office. They called it the Community Service Center for Liaison and Community Services. They called it that. We called it El Centro. I still have the sign, El Centro. But eventually, I graduated. No, I didn't quite graduate from Chabot College. I just finished everything and transferred to Berkeley. And then from Berkeley, I came to Cal State Hayward. I got my master's degree, and I came back, and I had about 8 positions available to go to work throughout the state of California. And I ran into the president when we were with Cesar Chavez. We had a big, long picket line, and there he comes to the Safeway store, and I said, you're not gonna cross this line, are you? He looked at me and said, oh, no, I'm just here to make sure everything's okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Buffington. Go that way. So, guess what? He hired me to come back to Chabot College as an academic counselor. But they called me a Mexican-American counselor. And my job was to recruit Mexican-American students. And I said to myself, hey, that's a pretty good job. I'm a Mexican. I can speak the language, I know the culture, I know the values. So I took it. But 1 year later, I realized that love, commitment, support, all that was not enough to be able to retain the students that were coming into Chabot College and being dropped out. That was the hardest part of my life, because you have to really begin to evaluate yourself, to look at that mirror and say to yourself, am I doing a good job? Or am I doing a bad job? Or am I doing a job just to get paid? These are all moral and ethical questions that you ask yourself. And so I did. And that's where Puente came out of. Because I think that the college, the community, the state of California had a commitment to help all Latino students. And that's what Puente emerged. But we talk a lot about community. There was no support for Puente in the beginning. It took a lot of work. But the one thing that really took it out of perspective and made it into a strong organization is the fact that out of the community, over 50 Latino professionals from the community volunteered to come in and help students to become mentors, not to tell them about how the successes were, but to tell them how they struggled to get to where they were at, to their professional development, and to encourage and to motivate them to continue in their career goals. And that's the way Puente emerged. As I think back, one of the most important things that I remember is not the classes. It was my interaction with my colleagues, with Jose, with Teresa, us, all the way. We had Ruy Treviso passed away. We had Oscar Torres passed away. We had Linda Gallegos who passed away. We had a lot of people. But these people still live in my heart because they were just simply the educators to me. And I think I learned from them what I have today. And you're the same way here. You're going to be faced with moral and ethical dilemmas. Don't be afraid. Stand up for your rights, work hard, and make sure that you keep reminding yourself you're doing it for the betterment of the Latino community and for the state of California and this country. If you don't do it, no one's there to help us with the young people in our lives. Muchas gracias.
Here we have Maria Elena Ramirez, one of those who sat in the library discussing at the very beginning the word Chicano, who are we, what is this about? And so I like her to, and she's now a counselor, right? Or she was? Okay,
Retired.
go for it.
Okay.
Ramirez.
Thank you so much. I think it's such an important thing to have the opportunity to share on an intergenerational level because the struggle is continuing. And it's one thing we learned back in the 60s the hard way is change doesn't come. We were so hopeful things were going to change, but it's a long process. So pace yourself because some of our people burned out and we need you for the long run. And I also want to thank my comadres here, these women that I met here at Chabot. You know, we weren't the front people, we weren't the spokesmen, we were the workers. And when you work together and you make those signs and you attend those meetings, you get a bond, and Jessica was working here and then she got married and was having kids, but we kept in touch because that's a needed thing also. You know, but we always valued each other, even though we weren't valued in this struggle. So when I came to Chabot in the late 60s, I wasn't encouraged to go to college, you know, and they met me as Mary Ellen because I was Miss Pilgrim, right? I thought I was so westernized. And slowly by slowly, when we started meeting, it was Mexican American Student Union. And I remember one of our first speakers that came was a farm worker. And Cesar Chavez was sending farm workers out. And this, for me, it was like opening my whole eyes and heart because the woman, I remember it was a woman, she said she was glad we were in college. She was glad we were here, but don't forget the farm workers. You know, the people that work the land, don't forget them. And they got us going to become picket, you know, why were we picketing? And that was the first time I was called a communist. And we used to think, why are they calling us this when it's for good wages and we don't want children in the fields and we want clean drinking water and this is communism? You know, and when you're young, we say, yeah, okay. That you call me, is that the best you have? You know, but Chabot at that time, and I found this out through the Black Student Union, because one of the beautiful things I felt about Chabot is we got in coalitions. Yeah. We had the Black Student Union, and we got close with them, you know, and the white radicals, the peaceniks, the anti-Vietnam, they used to share a lot of information. Why were we in Vietnam? The economic benefit, you know, we just knew our boys were going there. We didn't know that, oil and resources and all these things, you know, that are going on. And it was a Black Student Union member who told me, well, you know, back then Chabot had a district. It had boundaries. And he said the boundary ended right where the Black community ended in San Leandro. And on this side, it ended by Dakota, where I lived. Now there's no districts, but back then we thought, well, that's funny. The black community there, and here's the brown community here, and who's going to Vietnam? I mean, so it really started shaping, and as women, we, you know, the workers, but we, you know, we were taking it all in. The other thing is it was family, this struggle was family oriented because my mother used to come when we were picketing and we were starting to ask for Chicano counselors and history. And you know, back then, the counselor I met here at Chabot, when I first came, I remember feeling, you know, because in high school, I had been told that I would be lucky if I finished high school. Back then, the teachers felt like they could tell the barrio kids that, you know, so I told them, well, I'm not sure. And here I was, the English only speaking, you know, my English skills were fine. It was the Spanish that they were trying to, but he said, after I made it through a semester, he said, I didn't think you'd make it, you know, and I'm thinking, wow. If it wasn't for my peers, you know, who had been through, none of us were like targeted for college, but we supported, we became the peer counselors, the support, and also knowing, wow, we're here, but what about all those other kids? Because it was, one of the signs, I don't know if Delvise ever found it, but one of the signs I used to carry was community college, ha! Because it wasn't. Not only borders, it was white, and us trying to open it up and make these coalitions, they made us feel like, what history do you have? You know? Anyway, but my mother, our parents, our sisters and brothers would come. We used to have a member from Cal State East Hayward back then. Manuel Gomez used to come to our meetings. And, you know, so it was like sharing because they were the first Chicanos up there at East Bay. You know, Merritt College, Berkeley, there was a lot of things going. So we started to, oh wow, look at this whole world. And Manuel, I remember he said, how come a lot of us have inferiority? Like we think we're, and he started saying, well, that's the flip side. When you have white supremacy, they need, you know, non-white inferiority. And we started talking about Fanon and other writings that what is a colonized mentality that keeps us down, that we could be our own worst enemies instead. So, I mean, it just started opening up. And we, back then, almost all the campuses had teatro groups because we were influenced by Teatro Campesino. You know, and I was the one that used to write the skits, and they all I go, oh, you could do this. You know, we're on drama. We know how to act. We know how to do these. So we had theatrical groups, and we used to go to the high schools and do little skits, and there was the guitars and music. And I wish we had that back because you all, the young, are going to be the best recruiters for the ones that are not thinking about college. When we used to march on the administration, I mean, you know, we get our picket signs, we were never like plotting, you know, like, I mean, but they saw us like as if we had bandanas on and guns. I mean, they would go and chain the front, didn't they like lock the administration doors? When we would come in, we would only like picket. And with the guitar, and it was all like, but I know some of those board meetings, you know, they were so afraid of change and the fact that we could demand something that affected our self-determination, you know, not only for us, but for our community. And I think we can never lose track that, you know, it's not just us. Of course, we need to do it for your own dreams, but, you know, there's so many out there. There's so many that are not approached and not encouraged still. I mean, it's sad. I mean, here, I just retired after you know, being a counselor and to know that the dropout rate is as bad now as it was when we were young, and life goes fast. That's too long, and they're still telling us, have patience, or, you know, it'll happen. I mean, I love what young people are doing now, taking it to another level, because we used to say, you know, racism, we could deal with the people that didn't like us, but when it's systemic and generational, and even back then, who was in jail? A lot of our young brothers, cousins were in jail for marijuana, or, you know, victimless crimes. I mean, we were filling the prisons then, we were making those links, and that's going on now. That's why this intergenerational discussion, it needs to go on. And if I'll close with one more thing, is I think we didn't know we were history, you know, living history. And so a lot of us, we didn't keep the pictures, the posters, you know, so many things documented, write your stories, even if it's a diary, take those pictures, keep them, because they're not going to share this history with you. They write it, and we're still like missing in action in education for our numbers and for what's needed. And with that, I'll pass it on. Come on.
Thank you.
We still
thank you.
need these women.
Thank you, Marilena. Well, we're running a little short with time, and I would like to introduce José Dorado, who was really an activist, and he wrote a very moving article in one of our newsletters. Joe, go for it.
Thank you very much. My name is Jose Antonio Dorado. I was born and raised in Oakland. My father moved us to San Leandro when I was 16, so that's how I ended up coming to Chabot. But I just want to let you know that these people you see here changed my life, and I don't say that lightly. Antonio, Elix, Marilena, Paz, Jesse, Teresa. They really changed it for the better, really turned me around. I learned who I was, who I am. I took a new direction, a far more serious direction. And I have these people to thank for it. And that includes Delvis. I became a math major because you told me to do that, because there weren't many Latinos in math. So I took over my father's tax preparation and bookkeeping business, and I'm an enrolled agent with certification from the IRS. And it served me well, so I appreciate that a great deal, Delvis. One of the proudest moments of my life here at Chabot was La Carpa. That was quite a struggle. I remember that when we put it up, and I was just a bit player. These were the players. But I remember how much I enjoyed the fact that when Dr. Buffington turned around, we put the first one up, we were right there in his window. And then we got the larger one that we put up in the front, and we had a great deal of community support. There were classes being ran out of the tent. People from the community would bring us food. And then we got the larger one, the huge army tent that we put over here by the student center so the students could see us. And remember we'd come in the mornings and we'd find out these racists had ran over the tent with their cars. And so we started, even though it was against the rules, we started staying overnight, so there'd be 20 or 30 of us that would stay the entire night. And I can remember the guards coming by once in a while and poking their head into the flaps. They said, "What do you want?" "You're not supposed to be here. We're going to stay. You guys are going to leave." They left. I remember the Building 100 being filled with riot police when they gave us that deadline. And how many community members were here to support us no matter what was going to happen. They had our backs. And I got to tell you a quick story. about La Carpa. Of course, the center was established, and Felix knows about this story because I confirmed it with him. I heard later on that when he came back from Berkeley and started working for Dr. Larson, that there was some sort of a meeting that was discussing the possibility of dissolving or moving the centro. And Felix was in this meeting in his coat and tie. I guess there were other administrators and faculty, and who knows who else was there. In any case, when the discussion came around to moving or dissolving the centro, he took his tie off and said, "Don't you guys ever forget, we still have La Capa in storage." But again, I just want to let you all know how much I appreciate every one of the persons up here and how they affected my life. And again, for the better. I'll always be grateful. Let me just close with that the struggles of today we struggled against in the 60s and 70s. And what we're seeing happening nowadays is something that has to be fought, and not, it has to be done out in the street. It has to be done at the most serious level. We're talking about the same environmental degradation, we're talking about the same racism, the same sexism, the same sorts of struggles, and they're even more clear nowadays. They have to be taken at the very most serious level, and there isn't any shortcuts. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we have two very important people that were there at the very beginning. Paz Flores is probably the oldest one I remember, not age-wise, but in terms of contact. And then Jessica Galaviz is an exemplary figure. She was Jessica Hart, I'm sorry. She was here working, right, in the bookstore, and she was very daring. Imagine somebody working at Chabot, really standing up and fighting for Chicano Latino rights. That was that Jessica. Okay, come over, just sit there, whatever you like to do.
I would like to thank everyone for attending today. And I'm a little nervous because I really don't talk a lot, only to my friends. But I would like to thank each one of you for coming, because it is going to be a memorial time for you. If you're active now, I'd like to congratulate you. I'd like to make you feel that it's an important thing to do in your life, especially for your children and for your grandchildren. And if you're able to live a long, healthy life, you're going to be able to see a lot of changes. And those changes are going to be very, very important for yourself. Not for your mom and dad and children and all those other people, but for you, for yourself. Because self-growth is very important to be able to sustain this type of life that we're living now, because there's so many issues going on. But I'll tell you from the beginning, I was 18 years old when I graduated out of Mount Eden High here in Hayward. I was raised in Hayward all my life, and I was raised with Portuguese and Italian. I didn't know I was Mexican until I came to Chabot. And culturally, it was a shock, because I thought I was an average all-American girl until I came onto the campus and I realized that I was brown and I had curly hair and I had other people identifying with me. And one of them is Buzz, right here. This young lady was, I think, in her 20s or 19 when she came up to me telling me that I was a Chicana and that I had to identify with these people. And I said, wait a minute. She goes, are you Latin? Are you Mexican? Or what are you? And I said, I'm Mexican. And then she says, well, I have a group of people that get together and we talk about the Mexican issues. And I think it would be important for you to come and participate with us. And I did. I was working in the bookstore. She would come in with Rudy Treviso, and she would come up to me and look at me, and she'd come up and talk and say, hi, I want to introduce myself. I want you to come to these meetings. We really need support. And I looked at her and I said, well, maybe, maybe I'll take the time to go and communicate with you guys and identify with you. But I really, deep down inside, didn't really want to do that. Until one day I finally did. I broke down and I did. I went in. And I have to tell you that I never felt human and important than participating with all these people. And we did boycotts. Felix Galavis is a good friend of mine. He participated in everything from the very beginning of developing programs here at Chabot, and implementing new rules and regulations that had to be, developed. And then his communication with the community, and also with the communication of these ladies and these men that all participated with him and myself. I would like to remind everyone here how important that is to go on and get a higher education. And even if you don't complete a master's degree or a PhD or whatever, you will have life experiences to fall back on. And even if you're a wife and you have children and your husband goes off and does what he has to do for a progressive, individual that they have to be, you have to really participate too. You really have to encourage that growth for yourself and for him and for the family and for your community. So I just would like to let you know that my memories are with these people forever, and I don't regret whatever I did back in my younger days, because it helped me grow as a person. It really has. Okay?
Last but not least, Paz Flores, the very first, but she should be at the very top.
Back in 1902. We've covered a whole lot of what we did during that time, and I just want to focus on a few things. One of the things is, Maria Elena covered also, about how we worked with other groups of people. And I think that's still a very important point today. At that time, we worked closely with the Black Student Union and with the white group. What were they called? SDS? White Progressives? Yeah, and they were also working with us, and we all, because we all had similar experiences, and so all of us were in the same boat, in essence. And so we did work closely together. So again, I want to just suggest that keep that open, because that's really important. One of the big things that they do, and they did with us, was try to divide us, one against the other. And, we're all united. We all have the same goals, and we have similar experiences, because if you're brown, or if you're black, or if you're yellow, we get all the same as far as racism, and as far as institutionalized racism. And that's the other thing I wanted to talk about, was institutionalized racism. So that's not about, Joe Blow up the street that calls you, oh, you wetback or whatever. No. What this is about is people who are educated, who are politically powerful, who keep the institution working in such a manner to exclude, they need workers. And let me go a little further. When I was working in the high schools, we developed a program that was called the College Motivation Program. And it was to help Latinos to go to school. And one of the first things that I noticed there, which really surprised me, we had access to the kids' the transcripts. And we had people there, so many Latinos. At that time, they were mainly Mexicanos, because that's what Hayward was at that time, was mainly Mexicanos. We had so many Mexicanos that they went in through this education, they had A's in math, they had A's in all of these college prep classes. And these Mexicanos were being geared in their freshman year. They met with the counselor, and the counselor started turning them towards either carpentry, woodshop, auto mechanics. Now these are kids that were A's in algebra, in science, but they were Latinos, in English. And it was something that it prevailed everywhere with the Latinos. You could see it. It was so clear that that's what they were doing. With the Latinas, what they were doing then, and probably they're still doing, what they were doing then was that they put the Latinas in the clerical field. They told us all to be clerks, to go. Now, my father, I had a lot of influence from my family. My parents said they wanted me to go to college. So when I came and I approached all the kids in high school, I was in Sunset High School. I'm a homegirl. I was born in Hayward, California. So at Sunset High School, the counselors were talking to the kids about going to college. So I approached my counselor, because I wanted to go to college. So I talked to her, and she strongly suggested that I take one of these clerical business schools instead of going to college. Here you have a kid that wants to go to college, who has the capabilities of going. Why would you tell them to go and go into the business school? But for me, because I was such a cabezona, and especially since she told me that she didn't want me to go, I said, well, that's what I'm going to do. So I went to college for sure. But this kind of experience isn't just for me. It wasn't just my own experience. That's what was happening in 1967, in 1968. That's what was happening. 69, 1970. And so many of these kids, and we ended up getting so many of our kids going to college. We helped them with we helped them in directing them to the academic classes. We connected them to Chabot College. And then we helped them with scholarships to get, to the colleges and financial assistance and all of that. That's a big need because right now, our Latinos are they're not finishing high school. They're not even finishing high school. If they come here to Chabot, they're here for a minute and then they leave. For some reason, they're not motivated to stay at Chabot College, to stay at a JC. There's something really missing because our kids come and then they just come for a little bit and then they're gone. So this institutionalized kind of racism is alive and well. And I hope that you also look into that. And then the other point one more point that I wanted to make was for us, a lot of us gave up a lot in the struggle, and a lot of us didn't perform as well with our education as we should have and could have, because they had us doing all the work. Okay, so you want a Chicano Student Union? Okay, well, put it together. You want this? Put it together. You want that? Put it together. You want this class, that class? They had us doing the curriculum. They had us doing everything, And that's the other thing that, we were just young kids. And so it was so important for us, so we went ahead and did it. But, in reflecting, you have to pull yourself through and you have to get your college education, and that's really important. So you need to do your studying. You need to do whatever it takes to get you there because that's where we need you, okay? That's where we need you. So don't let that fall behind. Don't let that fall behind. They would love that to happen, okay? So I guess that's my main thing.
We need to move forward, and I'd like to introduce to you Future Generation, an organization that started here at Chabot, right? Carnal. Okay, just tell us a little bit about what you're about so that we can maybe join you. I'm too old now.
No. Good afternoon, thank you. You know, it's very hard to sit up here and talk about our organization when you have some great individuals here that've done a lot of work that, you know, seems that what we're trying to do is very minimal and, you know, trying to do a little granito in the big giant sand in the ocean, you know. A year and a half ago, we came up with an idea to try to address the Latino male success rate here at Chabot College. I approached a couple individuals, Josue Hernandez, a couple of the other counselors, to be able to reach out and start working with these Latino males, because we as Latinos achieved our goals to go to college and are here now, you know, working, you know, and doing stuff here, so we can achieve and try to show them that, you know, we've dealt with some of the barriers, we've dealt with some of their issues, and we can actually make them succeed if we can give them support. So our hard work, we worked and convinced our vice president, we convinced our deans, we convinced people to be able to provide us support and funds and, you know, guidance to be able to help students here, you know, Latino males. And currently we have about 13 Latino males. As you can tell, it's midterms and finals, and all of them are hardworking in classes, so they couldn't attend today. But, you know, we're trying to start, you know, and I wish that we can, you know, ask you one of these days to come out and talk to them, because they need to hear about some of these struggles, some of these battles and fights that we have, that you guys worked hard to achieve and so forth. But you know, one of the things, we're HSI, Hispanic Service Institution grants. We just got a 5-year grant, $5 million. So this is our first year, we're still working through that. So your change, ladies and gentlemen, has done a very wonderful thing for us. You know, you've actually laid the groundwork. You know, I want to thank Sandra Genera, who's the counselor from here. Leticia Reyes, who's now our interim dean for Trio STEM, who's working with the math department for here at Chabot College. We have brand new instructors. I mean, we're trying to make some changes here at Chabot College, which is great. And, you know, we owe it up to you, because your hard work has paved the way for us to try to make some moves. But, yeah.
So for us, thank you, President, being able to speak. We are very fortunate to work with these young men. And I think one of the 4 models that we implemented, it was the personal, financial, academic, and then we and you. So these students actually deal with a lot of personal and financial. And then when they come to Chabot, it's kind of like, how do they juggle actually academic piece? So we need to empower them. So as they enter, our emblem is as they enter Chabot College, it's all of us together. This way, that's why it's the we part, because that's the 4th step, is that we together, we need to help them. And successfully, they've actually been able to reach academically, and some struggle, and actually we're actually making them believe that failure is a good thing too, because from failure, we learn from our mistakes too. And also, what Carnal stands for is creating academic readiness for aspiring Latinos. And we, every Thursday, we wear our guayaberas. On special events, we wear our white guayaberas. And guayaberas are something so symbolic in our culture. And guayaberas, what it means is that, you know, back in the days, is where the farmers were actually will put their seeds in it. So as they come in, we are actually carrying our seeds too. So for me, it's actually, they're the ones that encourage me every single day. And, you know, I love, you know, seeing them. Sometimes we stay here till 10, 11, tutoring and reading essays, scholarships. We actually have received probably close to $10,000 in scholarships all at once from all of them too. So it's a struggle, but the struggle still continues, as we all know. So I appreciate, I admire it. Back at UCSB, I was also part of Congreso Mecha, and now here we do it in an institution that we help them, and also working with a lot of our coworkers that believe in our passion and our mission too. So thank you.
Thank you.
We like people to participate, but I just want to make sure that Juan Espinosa, who's a Hayward resident for a while, right?
On the
Used to be.
I was producer for Body of Expression,
He was.
which was a TV show from 1976 to
So why
1985.
don't you say a few words about
Yeah.
that?
Yes.
He's
He
a mover and
recorded it.
shaker.
I recorded it.
Yeah, we ran the show for 10 years. It was an all-volunteer production of junior high, high school, and community people. We were working on the labeling and monitoring of Raza youth as gang members by the State Attorney General's office, the Hayward City Council, the Chief of Police, and by a group called La Familia Counseling Center, which bought into this whole premise to identify Chicanos as gang members. They had developed a computer system to put their names into a computer system so they could track their movements. So we were against this, and we came on. I was a youth worker for La Familia along with 2 other people, and we were told to cut that nonsense off the air or out, and we refused to because we didn't feel that our work and the show had anything to do with each other. So we were terminated, and then we were sued for libel and slander by La Familia Counseling Center. But the show lasted 10 years. We've been doing a revitalization of the show recently. Hopefully we're going to do a presentation here at Chabot College where we present a videotape for an hour, do a panel historical discussion of crew members, and then a question and answer period. So, and then I have tapes for sale once we come to the production here. I'll be able to sell videotapes of the show itself.
Great.
Okay?
Thank you
Well,
very much.
thank you.
Well, we want to end up, but remember, mañana, tomorrow is what day? Cinco de Mayo. That's a day that has a tremendous impact on our lives. I would really urge you to study a little bit about the history, because here you had a country that was devastated. And just because they stood up to power, they succeeded. And the same thing needs to be happening today. We must resist, some of the aggression and the injustices that are going on in our surroundings. I'm getting old, but I tell you, if I have a little bit of strength, I will speak up, and I urge you to stand up as well and to write and call for a better world, for expanding education, for stopping oppression. I have a saying, awareness of injustice. Awareness of injustice. Make your neighbors, make everybody aware of bad things that are happening.
Yes.
Because human nature in itself prompts us to seek righteousness, prompts us to really move the world to a better future. Thank you very much.